Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on my 7th video. Keep sharing these videos, share them as much as you can. I want to get the word out and get things going because I want to help others that have been through what I've been through and maybe prevent even more from going through what I went through. Today's topic actually came to me yesterday. I was trying to figure out the past couple of days what I was going to talk about today. And then I had a therapy session yesterday, like I always do every Friday. Well, through talking with my therapist, it dawned on me what I want to talk about, and that was vulnerability. What started our talking about that was I had gotten a picture that my wonderful sister-in-law painted for me. It was of a river in an area that I grew up in, well, kind of north of where I grew up in. But it held wonderful memories for me because it was where my godmother lived in that area, and I would go visit her to hang out with her daughters who were roughly my age group. And we would walk to that river just to get out of the house, and it was kind of like my happy place. And I had asked her to paint that picture for me, kind of like helping me have a focal point for when I'm in the throes of anxiety and my brain locks and I can't think. I focus on that and bring myself back down. So when I got it, I got some weird body signals with it. And anybody who's been through therapy knows it with when there's trauma involved, you go through fight, flight, or freeze mode where your body does one of those three things in response to trauma. Some people just freeze right there, freeze solid, can't move. Others, their first response is to get the heck out of out of the area, and others, it's like no, they go and fight. Well, I was getting weird body signals associated with the picture, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? So I talked to my therapist about it, and we were trying to figure out where it was coming from. And I said, well, it could be that past experiences when I was around that age when I had the most memories of that river. And we were going through that. And he said, no, enough, it had nothing to do with my ex, which I guess that's an improvement. I've dealt with stuff with him. Now I'm dealing with other stuff that I don't think I've ever dealt with, really. And in going through everything, memories started popping up like boom, 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 all of a sudden. And then one big memory came up that, oh my goodness, it literally blindsided me. I mean, we figured out why it came out because we were poking, basically, but it basically blindsided me because for me it came out of left field. First memory that came up was when I was 9 years old. My mother and my father were still married, and long story short, my father was working overnight as a security officer. My mother was home alone with me and my sister. Somebody mistakenly thought nobody was home and tried to burglarize the house. We had a German Shepherd dog that alerted my mother that somebody was in the yard. He didn't bark, he just jumped on the back door, woke my mother up, and she's half asleep thinking that my father's coming home. She wasn't paying attention to the time. And turns out it was somebody trying to break in the house. They took a broom that my mother had thrown out for the trash to come pick up, and he uh, broke through the glass door. It was a door that had 3 glass panels on it. So he broke through one of the panels with obviously an intention to reach in and unlock the door. Well, my mom screamed, and that scared him off. So, of course, I did not feel very comfortable at all after that. I was shaken like a leaf once I finally calmed down. And my sister was kind of young, so she didn't really know too much of what was going on. Well, after that, of course, I didn't feel very safe in that house. And also didn't help that I had a very sick and twisted father that got his kicks out of scaring me. Our house was 3 feet off the ground, and my bedroom window was at least, oh gosh, 5.5 feet off the ground, at least. And my father was 6'4", so it was nothing for him to reach up and scratch on the screen at night when he's out in the yard lifting weights or whatever, because he lifted weights, and scared the bejeebers out of me. And it would take a couple of seconds for me to realize it was him, and I would calm down. But by then, I was all hyped up, and my mother would get so mad at him because then it took forever for me to go to sleep because I was uptight. So that didn't help in me feeling secure. And then when I was a teenager and young adult, I was not the brightest bulb in the pack. I had lived basically a sheltered life, and I didn't understand the street life at all. So I was hanging around people I should not have been hanging around at all. I look back and think, oh my goodness, God protected me from any harm there. But these these guys that I was hanging around, broke into our house a couple of times. And so, but yet, my father never thought to protect me. He never thought to try to get a day job to where he could be home at night. It was, because I wasn't, in his mind, I didn't need protection. And even though I couldn't, when he was not home, I'd sleep on the couch. That way I could hear if somebody was going to try to break in the house. Because I was always afraid if I slept in my room, was way in the back of the house, I wouldn't hear somebody trying to come in. And then, of course, I was raped in that house. So all of these memories were coming up, and we were just starting to pinpoint the similarities. It was the vulnerability. And then another memory kicked in that blindsided me like none other. And I went into a mini meltdown. I had a neighbor whose wife would take care of me and my sister when we were younger. And she was like an aunt to us. He was like an uncle to us. They were like an extended family, literally, because her sister we would call aunt. Her parents we'd call grandma and grandpa, their last name. His grandparents we would call them grandma and grandpa. His brother we called uncle. I'm sorry, it was her brother-in-law we called uncle. I was getting confused there. Basically they were just family, like extended family. Well, when when I was 12, he inappropriately touched me. But I told his wife, and his wife was like, well, it was an accident, I'm sure. And I'm like, you know what? You're right, probably. And I sloughed it off. Well, over the years, he was making inappropriate comments, but I didn't know how to handle it. When I was in 8th grade, he was very, very inappropriate to me. Um, Never touched me, but the comments he would make, and he would even call me when I would get off of school. And I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't tell my mom, which, admittedly, if I told my mom would have beaten the daylights out of him. But my mom would have definitely confronted him. And then they stopped for a little while. And then they started back up again when I went to live with my father. When my father had me convinced that it was my duty to take care of him. Never mind that my father was in his 40s, or, yeah, 40s at that point, so he could take care of himself. Well, anyway, the advances from the neighbor were getting more and more, until one day I went to go visit his wife, because like I said, I loved his wife dearly. She was like an aunt. He was in the yard working on something. He grabbed me. I was going to go towards the back door, because I always came in through the back door. Everybody did, basically. And he grabbed me and kissed me. I mean, planted a big kiss, grabbed me, held me tight, kissed me. And I'm like, I didn't know how to handle it. I was 16, kind of sheltered, didn't know much about life. I was all kind of sort of flattered in a weird way, because an older man wanted me. And at that point, he was like 50 something, because they were roughly 10 years older than my parents. And so I didn't know how to handle it. And then, I don't know, a week or two later, I was coming home from something, and he happened to be out in the front yard working. And he's like, starts making advances and propositioning me. I'm not catching on that it's a proposition, because like I said, I was very sheltered, and at that point I wasn't the brightest bulb in the pack. And I said, are you kidding? I said I would need at least $50. Back then, $50 was a good chunk of change. But I was kidding, and somehow I thought he was too. And he goes, are you kidding me? There's whores around where I work that only charge 10. I wouldn't give you more than 20. And then that's when I realized he was serious. And I'm like, well, I told my father about the advances. And my father confronted him. And my father came back and didn't do anything about it. I were to find out later that the reason my father didn't do anything about it was because he told my father that I was having all these boys come in and out of the house, that I must have been, that he felt I was loose. I don't care if I was loose. I was 16 years old. A 50-year-old man has nothing to do with a 16-year-old. No. Second, I don't care if I was the neighborhood prostitute. No is no. Plain and simple. So, and these guys that would come in and out are my best friends. They were all like brothers to me. The thought of doing anything? No. Ew. So, I never had anybody to protect me, because my own father didn't feel the need to protect me. I didn't want to be home alone because I knew I wasn't safe. Oh, yeah, you're safe, he would say. You're safe as long as you're in the house, you're safe. Well, no, I got raped in that house because the guy was able to figure out a way to break in where I wouldn't hear it. And he came up behind me, pulled a towel over my face, and well, the rest is history. So, and so I was very vulnerable. And then something also hit me that really caused me to cry. And that was when he said about the money, when the neighbor said about the money. It just dawned on me now that he was reducing me to a prostitute, saying that I was nothing more than a prostitute. I was nothing more than something to serve him, get his jollies off, to put it nicely. And that stuck with me. I mean, I don't know that if I consciously thought that way at that point, because like I said, I was sheltered, so it did. But that did affect me and how I acted. Because, in looking back, because of my father and because of this incident, I felt that my purpose was to please men. You know, with my father, taking care of him. My father was never inappropriate with me, but in fact that I did everything else a wife would do. You know, I cooked, cleaned, even did his dirty laundry, ran errands for him. Even I was married and had kids, I'd run his errands and go to the grocery store for him. When he could have, he was perfectly capable of going to the grocery store. He just didn't feel like it, and he took advantage of using me to do it. So I felt like my purpose was to serve a man, and that I was only good one thing, because of course all the guys I dated, they only wanted one thing. If I didn't want to give them what they wanted, they laughed. And so I think that's why I stayed with my ex for so long, because I felt protected. When, now that I can look back in retrospect, because he was very protective of me, or appeared to be. Nobody better look at me wrong, because oh man, then it would not be pretty if somebody even looked at me wrong. But I realize now that it was more of a pride thing and a possessive thing. I was his wife. Nobody's going to mess with his wife. It wasn't nobody's going to mess with me as a person. I was just his wife. And but I stayed with him because I felt protected. I felt safe and less vulnerable. And something just occurred to me now, that the reason what got me to finally leave is to realize that I was vulnerable with him, that I wasn't safe, that my kids weren't safe, their mental health wasn't safe. And I didn't start seeing it until towards the end, because then he let out all the stops and he was getting crueler and crueler. A lot of it had to do with alcohol, but because he was a mean drunk. Excuse me. But so that's what I want to talk about today with vulnerability. We're all vulnerable. And it's scary to be vulnerable. And when you're in a relationship that you've been in for 5, 6, 10 years, 20 years, there's some kind of safety involved. It's a comfort thing. The only way I know how to describe it is like an old blanket. That's when you're, a little toddler. They have an old blanket that they drag everywhere with, drag it all over the house. Everywhere they go outside, drag it on the floor, but they got it with them. And it's tattered and practically in shreds, but they don't want to get rid of it because it's a comfort thing. Well, that's how it is. Why I stayed with him, one of the reasons. Because I knew what to expect almost. Kind of, sort of. I mean, he would say some things that were horrible that I didn't expect, but it was still, I knew how to deal with it. And it wasn't scary in the fact that I was used to it. Going into the unknown, something you're not used to, it's scary as crap. The day I called the police on him, which is coming up a year almost. Next month will be a year. And once all the adrenaline came down and stuff, and I went to sleep that night, the next morning I went to the courthouse. Well, no, I had gone that afternoon, that's right. And then the next morning I was taking care of some other stuff that I had to do. I had taken off of work and got everything taken care of. Everything, all my ducks in a row at that point for what I could do at that point. And then I sat down. That's when I broke down. And that's when I started getting scared. Because it was like, what am I going to do now? I mean, I know I could do it. I was supporting us for over 3 years at this point on just my salary. So I wasn't really worried about that. But the unknowns, not knowing how anything with him was going to turn out, because at this point I didn't know if they were going to charge him. It wasn't until the next day that I found out that they were going to charge him with assault. And it was all of these unknowns, and I was scared. And it took God calming me down, because it basically telling me, I got this. You're okay. And I want to tell you that you've got this. And you are worth it. I saw my sister-in-law today on Facebook posted a meme that I immediately saw. Of course, it was right after I was talking to my therapist this morning when he texted me to check in on me and called me a Spitfire, which that's another thing I want to talk about too in a minute. I was just going to talk with my therapist about everything and wondering if I was worth anything. And it's like, yes, I know I'm worth what God says I'm worth. But when all of these voices are getting in your mind and you're dealing with things like this, it's like, thinking I wasn't even worth my father protecting me, or, the men in my life that were supposed to be protective. Yeah, I can protect myself. Let somebody try to look at me wrong, and that'll be all she wrote. I don't play anymore. But you still expect your parent to protect you. And I wasn't even worth my parent protecting me. And then I see a meme that my sister-in-law had posted about, this is not up for negotiation. I am worthy. And there's a couple of other things on that meme, but basically that was the gist of it. I immediately took that and made it my cover photo on Facebook, because it was like, no, that's me. And that's my reminder. You are worthy. That's not up for negotiation. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of protection. You are worthy to be safe. You don't have to deal with a relationship that you're being abused. Yeah, it's hard to get out of it because you're scared. It's kind of a comfort thing. You know what to expect. It's not out there in the unknown. And I was blessed in the fact that I had a job. I had a good job. I was supporting us, so I knew I could support us. I know there are a lot of you that may not know what you're going to do if you got to go it alone. But do it anyway. Because there's enough help out there. Seek help. There's enough community aid out there, and no matter where you live in. And quite frankly, you're better off living in your car than you are living with an abuser. It doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't do your kids any good, especially your kids. I know if you're anything like me, you'll think about your kids before you. But now I forgot what I was going to say earlier. But you are worth it. So just keep on and know that you are worth it. Reach out to family. Reach out to friends. Take that risk. Because you can be a Spitfire. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. ADHD. About being strong. Because there was a time I didn't think I was very strong. And I felt very timid and very meek. I didn't talk much in front of others. People at church even have noticed how much I've become a talker again. And it's the old Penny coming out, but it's the new improved Penny. Again, Penny 2.0, like my therapist had suggested. It's like it fits because it's Penny 2.0. It's the old Penny, what I was, my personality, my attitude, but better and stronger. I didn't get that way overnight. It's been almost a year in the making, and it's still going. There are some days that I just want to curl up in a corner, curl up in my bed underneath the covers, and just pretend the world doesn't exist. But then there's other days that I get an attitude about me, and I'm like, and I realize that's Penny coming back out. So you'll get there too, I assure you. It just takes time. And a lot of prayer. Oh my goodness, a whole lot of prayer. The one good thing about all of this is I've gotten closer to God than I have ever been. I feel very in tune with Him, for lack of a better term. But keep it up. I'm talking to you. You who's in that relationship that thinks, oh, it's not that bad. Others have gone through a lot worse. Yeah, maybe there are others that have gone through a lot worse. but doesn't make what you're going through any less painful, and it doesn't make you any less worthy of being treated with respect and being able to be the you that you truly are, and not the you that your significant other wants, your spouse or your partner or whatever. You are worthy. You guys have a good week, and thank you for joining me again on yet another video. Keep sharing, because one day this will come to somebody that really needs it, and maybe prevent them from doing going through what happened to me. Y'all have a good week, and God bless.